All right.
Did you want
Next.
to touch? Yeah, I was gonna say. My bad.
Yeah,
Go
we
ahead.
could touch on it. No, we could, because there are aspects of it. I guess we could touch on. I want to talk about the Trevor Bauer thing. Obviously, nobody knows what actually happened. I mean, they're still in the information gathering process of
Yeah.
it. So
Can
don't
I?
really
Okay.
touch-
So can I? Here's what I've gotten from. I think it was like a Barstool thing where they're just kind of same thing. Like here's what we know so far. Um, it sounds like basically there's text message evidence of like a certain level of consent of like consensual nature to like these acts. Like he hasn't really like the things that have come out about like what he did. So far he hasn't like denied that. His stance has been that it was all consensual.
Right. So
Um,
I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but I would
right,
guess for the legal process would say is that is not proof that so you can text whatever you want to text, and then in the moment,
right,
if someone they said no, I don't want this type of thing, you did it
right,
anyways, and
right.
it wouldn't matter what you texted hours before
Right,
type of
right.
thing.
Yeah. The idea, I think the text, yeah, it's not so much that it's like, I give you permission to do this, this, and this,
Right.
just that like, there was like, there was rough stuff involved,
Right. There were it
before,
was
and it was like, and the response to it was positive. So
right. Well,
there was
they hung out
precedence
multiple
for,
times. So I
right,
mean,
right,
obviously this is an ongoing thing. Again, that does not prove, one. It doesn't prove one thing or the other.
yeah,
I think my thing I get more upset with. I'm not going to give a strong take either way because I don't know what happened. I think a lot of people can relate to the situation. Of I don't know if I want to get into that, but just like, yeah, they were obviously sexting. They were obviously having a relationship where they were talking about what they were going to do. That is, at least in my opinion, a healthy thing. If you're in a consensual relationship with someone, it's one of those things where then the story comes out and like you read it and I feel like it like seems worse than, it's like,
right,
no, everyone
right,
in a relationship like that's part of being in a relationship. You have conversations sometimes, you talk about what you're into and who are we to judge what people are into. So that's my
right.
stance on that. I think
Yeah,
my
that's important to say.
Right. So I think what I want to touch on in the story is where I have the biggest problem when we talk about these things coming up in our society now is that what the power of allegations, I think, bothers me. Whereas that regardless of like, I don't like how an allegation can essentially like ruin somebody's reputation and
Right,
career. Whereas
right,
like, I think there needs to be, and I know and I know this situation is such a tricky situation because in general, these domestic abuse, sexual violence, rape, all this stuff is as bad as it gets. It's terrible. If you know anything about me, I'm as big against this as anybody. And I know that they're really hard to prove because essentially it's just one person's word versus the other person's word. Most of the time, these
right,
acts are happening when it's just two people in a room. Occasionally
right,
you get it on video as we've seen, or neighbors hear it or something like that. But for a lot of time, it's just he said, she said type of thing. So I know that they're really hard to prove. So that I know this whole movement of listen, you have to believe women, and I totally agree with that. And I can only imagine, how difficult it is for someone that actually has been sexually assaulted to come out and talk about it and understand that the backlash that's going to happen for it and all that kind of stuff and I respect that, but at the same time, I don't like when it comes. What it does is it opens the door now where, yeah, if somebody wanted to, they could just make an allegation about somebody and just ruin their career, which we've seen at times. Now, I think it's important to make the point when I say that is that I believe 99.9% of the time, women are telling the truth and that this stuff is going on and that the stuff I'm talking about is a 0.1% of it. So, the overwhelming majority obviously is that why would somebody come out and lie about this unless it happened to them? All I'm saying
right,
is it does happen sometimes. I've personally seen it with other people. I've not personally seen the execution of it, but I've heard an argument between a girlfriend and boyfriend or whatever, and be like, if you don't do this, then I'm gonna claim that you raped me or that you hit me or something like that. It's like, oh shit, like that's you
yeah,
can't just be throwing that around type
yeah.
of thing. We've seen it
So
a
it
couple
like
times. I'm
yeah. I
sorry.
mean, I'm just saying. Like, I was just gonna say, it's definitely tricky. Like the the legal proceedings of, you know, when you're talking about sexual assault. I mean, it's such a sensitive thing, obviously, and like really hard. Yeah, it's really hard to prove it. When someone is accused of such a thing, it's a hard. It's not something you just brush off one way or the other. That sticks with you. The interesting thing I find in this, besides the obvious huge, you know, like what happened, is like almost like the public perception of Trevor Bauer moving forward in whichever way this goes. Like obviously, if this goes like you know, in the you know, negative for him way, like where, you know, he's found guilty of, you know, whatever. There's like, obviously there's going to be a stain on him. That's going to be terrible. But I feel like even if this becomes nothing, like if this was just BDSM fantasy gone wrong, and a misunderstanding, and, you know, everybody parts ways, satisfied, whatever, like people are still gonna, like, every time you hear Trevor Bauer's name, like this is gonna be the first thing you think of.
Not only is this going to be the first thing you think of, I think most people are going to be like, no, he did this and he just got off because he's a celebrity and because he has money and he has good lawyers. And I think that's the biggest problem with these types of situations. It's kind of the same thing on a different scale, but similar, like what the Deshaun Watson story is, where a lot of the narratives around it, a lot of people are like, honestly, as bad as this sounds, it's almost better if this can be proven true, because it's right. Like if it could, you know, like, and that's a terrible thing to say. I'm not saying I wanted it to happen, but like it's almost better for everyone, and not obviously the
path forward. It's like the path forward is the clearest if they're found guilty.
Right. And but like definitively, where it's not, there's, it's just like, okay, right, he did this, like, you know, blah blah. It's worse because it's not the problem with this accusation on one side, because it's so hard to prove. It kind of goes both ways. It's like a double-edged sword. Where then if you get off, it's like, well, you weren't found innocent. You were just found that there wasn't enough to convict you of being guilty. Right. And in the public perception's eyes, it's like, yeah, that you're guilty to us. You know, I mean, so I think, and it's such a weird story, because I saw that, you know, he's been put on the exemption list and he's not going to pitch. And part of me was like, I mean, that's such bullshit for an allegation to be able to cause someone not to be able to do their job. But on the same time, like, yeah, but also the way this is going, like, how does he pitch? You know, right, how do you let him pitch? But also how do you make it so he can't pitch? And so that's why ultimately, if this were to end with definitively being like this was a nothing story, he's completely innocent, this is a terrible look for, I don't want to be over extreme here, but like for our country. Like this is a terrible look for our society. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not trying to be over dramatic, but I'm just saying, like, if this is the type of thing that can derail, so I mean, like, yeah, I think there's a huge problem in that. So without saying, so I think ultimately, I'm like, honestly, I would rather almost read a story of like more proof of that, how this did occur, and then it's like, okay, good, I'm glad this came to light, and not, you know. No, he's exonerated or whatnot. Like, it's like, now there's a gray area.
Well, but this is different to me in that, like, there's not a dispute over like what actually happened. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like in the other ones, no, from what I understand, there's no dispute as far as like the physical acts that played out. Like my understanding, fuck it. Like this is what I know.
Can you explain a little bit more? I don't know what you mean by that. So can you explain that a little bit more?
So like the idea was that like the first time they met, they had sex. It was rough. They both enjoyed it. This is evidence in the text messages. They planned to meet again. They met again. This time, things were significantly rougher. The girl was like choked out, like unconscious, and like Bauer initiated anal sex like while she was unconscious. She woke up like battered and bruised, and this and that. And like from what I understand is that basically the defense or the Bauer's position is that this was all consensual. It was never that like, no, I didn't do that. It was like, no, I did that and I thought that's what you wanted me to do, and I'm sorry if it wasn't. And like,
okay, so hold on. What I had read and interpreted is that for the most part, yes, they're saying this was supposed to be rough, this was consensual, but like the specific parts of what I'd read from that is that no, you were never unconscious. I never choked you out. I choked you a little bit like you asked me to, but you never went unconscious, and there was never a point like that. And there was a point of her saying she got a concussion from it, where his point was like, no, that was days later. She had said that she was like in an accident, or what she told me and got the concussion, but at no point.
I hadn't heard that part.
Into the wall.
Okay, so I didn't hear that part.
The way I read was like there was like two specific parts where he was like, no, that didn't happen. Like it was rough, it was consensual, but the parts where she's talking about like the injuries and stuff like that, that did not happen with me. Not that she didn't ask for that and I did it because she asked for that, because my interpretation was he was saying, no, that did not happen with me. It happened at a later date.
So I didn't, okay, so that's...
Specifically, like she had like a crack on her skull or something where he was like, what I had read from the agent or something like that was like that was a week later. She texted him that she was in some fight or something like that, and he was like, "What? Like you got a concussion from that or so?" So that was his story the way I read it.
Got you. So there is dispute over some of the actions that occurred.
Right.
Got you. Okay.
My understanding. We might have different understandings, but
right. No, yeah, and I mean, no, like you definitely want to get all the facts before you come to an ultimate judgment on these things. I just I more wanted to comment on like, the like how the public perceives these things, and like, the like whether it goes one way or another, how like, how much it can be leave a lasting impression.
Right, because I think, this country in a sense was founded on many principles, one of them being you're innocent till proven guilty. And I would argue that recently it's, at least from a societal stance and public perception stance, it's become you're guilty until proven innocent. Yeah. And to me, that's a problem. I remember there was an E30 movie out on the Duke lacrosse team. I don't know if you remember that story. And that was it was like late, like 2007, 2006 range or whatnot. We were in high school. And I think that was almost like kind of the start of it. Of that, like they were tried in the media basically before they even got to court.
Right.
And I remember watching that and being like, yeah, that seemed like the start almost of these stories coming out because media was a thing and social media was starting to become a thing, and that, everyone would get this information and everyone decided what you were before you even got to court. And I was like, yeah, it seems like this would be problematic moving forward. And I think the other part of this story that maybe we can talk about too really quickly is like, speaking on public perception, is also, you could argue a lot of people don't like Trevor Bauer and find him a polarizing person, and that when these type of figures, something comes out, it's like, yeah, because I want to believe that, and because I already think he's this piece of shit person and he's like this, it's different. Whereas if I'm trying to think of an example like the other way, but like if you're like just a beloved person across, like when like stories of Derek Jeter or something like that. It's like, no, he's a great guy.
Manning, right?
Right. Like he's a great guy. Like I already like him. Everyone already respects him. So then
I've known him all my life. He would never do something like that.
Right. I'm just saying. So I find that to be fascinating too. It's like the Trevor Bauer. It's like, yeah, we already don't want to like Trevor Bauer. So it's really easy to convince me he's this person. So I don't know. I find that stuff to be interesting.
I feel like I have to say that like I feel like I'm making a lot of progress in like my views on these hot button issues. I still have like a good amount of that like, she's probably lying. Like you know what I mean? Like
that's not funny.
No, I'm actively like I have that reaction and I'm like, no, David, that's not right. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I have to like talk myself out of it for a second. But like I was like, they're out to get him. Like, no, wait, let me like actually figure some shit out.
Right. I think it's good to let all the facts come out, obviously, at least as many of them as you can, but I also have no problem admitting that, yes, my initial reaction and my reaction as it stands today is that I believe more on the Trevor Bauer side of it. And that's not to
Right.
say I don't believe women. That's not to say, it's just when I was reading the story, one, I have a hard time believing based on her accusations of the first time. It's just hard for me to believe then you would continue a relationship and continue to do this. So to me, right off the bat, that part is kind of weird to me. And yeah, if I'm to believe his agents and his representatives that there's all these kind of messages and I'm sure pictures and stuff that are involved in this, it's hard for me to believe that this is what's going on. And I know as I'm saying that, there's probably a lot of people that are listening to that going, well, fuck you, man. Women go through this, and this is why women don't come out and they say about it, because they're not going to be believed. And I get that side of it too,
Right.
There could be many. I'm sure there are millions of women that have been sexually assaulted that hung out with somebody multiple times and going, and if I do it multiple times, then now no one's going to believe me, but this really happened. And I get that part too. That's why it's such a fuck. I don't know what to believe. I don't know what to. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to believe. But
I think it's.
my first reaction when I saw it, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's unfair. It's like unfair to ask any human to like not try to draw their own conclusion, right? Like. If you give me any little set of information like this, like I'm gonna like kind of figure out what I think happened.
Right.
So I think so I don't think it's like necessarily it should be necessarily like wrong for you or me to say like, you know what, from the limited information I hear, and my own bias, like I tend to believe that Trevor Bauer did nothing wrong here, or did very little wrong here. As long as like we both would still keep an open mind to like if new information comes out, I can be proven wrong. Like, or once we get to the end of like the actual like legitimate legal process of like figuring out what happened, then I'll can change. Shit changes.
Yeah, I would say ultimately to your point, that's the key. Is that, yes, it is human to have an initial reaction and to come to your conclusions, but you have to be open on changing that if new information comes out and new facts come out. I think what the problem is that, so many people, they get, this is my opinion, and then no matter what comes out or what they go like, no, like I'm not changing my opinion. Well, that's where it becomes dangerous.
Yeah. People don't like being wrong.
No. Well, also because there's just so many, that's the other thing is, I know we're going off a little bit here, but the way, it is now with the internet and everything, like you can find something to prove your stance on anything, really. Right. There's some article, there's some piece of evidence that, whether it's really, like, you can be proven right, it feels like, more than ever. You can go on Google, type in, based on however your stance is, because my understanding of Google, like their algorithm is like they know what you're into, so they're trying to give you more of what you want. So if you like, they know you're the type of person that you don't want to believe women when they accuse men of sexual assault, and you type in Trevor Bauer, this, they're going to give you articles of how Trevor Bauer's been wronged, and whatnot. And so I think that's the other thing. And so then people are not willing to come off their stance because they keep searching for I can't think. Because
people keep telling them they're right.
They're looking for confirmation. That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for new information. They're looking for confirmation on what they already believe.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
That's all I got.